Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
I'd like to call this informational meeting of Tuesday, January 18th, 2022 to order. First item of business is committee reports, the UDC. Councilor Neitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a pretty quick meeting. We made appointments to our Citizens Advisory Committee and Technical Advisory Committee, which look at things for the Transportation Committee and bring us recommendations. We approved an operations plan for the MPO. We approved a couple of amendments to this state's transportation improvement plan called the TIP. And then we talked about funding announcements for Section 5310 funding for 2022, which is money that comes into the from the federal government to give grants to transit organizations, which we as a organization get to award annually. And we were going to get an update on the 41st Street interchange project, but that was deferred to the next meeting. I think the city is still tying up some loose ends as it relates to right-of-way and things as they finish out the plan. And that's it.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have council remarks. Councilors' remarks. I would like to point out to the council that the next week joint city council meeting with the Minnehaha County Commission has been canceled, but there is an informational meeting at 4 o'clock, and the joint city council and Lincoln County Commission meeting will be held at 7 o'clock in Canton. So please adjust your travel schedules for that. At this time, we're going to have the one and only presentation, Washington Pavilion Cornice and Parapet replacement. Scott Rust, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councilor. Scott Rust, Purchasing Manager with the City of Sioux Falls. If you guys remember, February last year, we gave an update regarding the Washington Pavilion and the condition of the cornice and parapet. And as you can see, we went ahead and appropriated some funds, and we started off with some design last year. If you guys remember, the cornice obviously is the lower part here for the people at home. Let's see if I can point at it. I don't think I got a pointer here, but the second photo there off to my right, your left, you'll see that's the cornice, and then the balustrade is the parapet part of the building. Again, there is no physical threat or health or safety danger to the people or anything like that. It's just that it's time for us to take a look at this. The structure on the building. We have noticed that we've had some water leakage in there, and it's time to obviously take a deep dive on it, look at it, replace it, so we don't have any pieces falling off that building. So I do have Steve Jastrom here from ARC Inc. He's the one who's been working on the design. This is the drawing that we gave you guys last February, and this is really the kind of how the cornice is actually attached to the building and how the balustrades are actually attached to the building. And he's going to go through the design that they came up with and how they plan on basically putting the plans together to take this cornice off the building, the balustrades off the building, and putting on the new fiberglass. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve. I'm going to let him walk through that with you guys, and I'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about the funding of this project and answer some questions you guys may have.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. We've been working, of course, on the design of the balustrade and the cornice to figure out what different ways can we do to help save money and still be cost effective. We've talked with a contractor out of Minneapolis area who specializes in just replacing, doing historical restoration work. We've had him help us with a cost estimate, and he's been very helpful to help us, especially in terms of a length of construction. One thing I wanted to point out here on the existing drawing is that there's steel rods that go vertically right through there those steel rods are some that are, which hold the balustrade in place, but a lot of the water that's leaking into the building, we feel is coming in on the very top, and then it gets down into the building. Kind of follows those rods and come down. And then there's some steel horizontal angles that go horizontally left to right, as you see there. When we did our original estimate, we didn't know how bad those steel angles were. They're all concealed, and we know with water getting in there, we know what water does to steel. But thankfully, you know, months ago, we did some restoration work where we had Jones caulking. We went up there at 6 locations. We tore apart the cornice and actually was able to look at those steel angles, multiple of those angles. And we found out that we only have to replace about 30% of them. And the other ones we're just going to paint as a protective coating. So that was another good, a very good thing to see, that it wasn't as extensively damaged as we thought originally, because you assume the worst until you find out to the better. The next slide, I think here, yeah, we talked a little bit, the Cornice Inspection. We had, as we reviewed that, we tearing it apart at 6 different locations. And then we found out a variety of things to help us with the costs, which reduced the cost estimate. One of them is the scaffolding versus the lift equipment. Originally, we thought that we'd have to scaffold the whole building and the contractor would work around the building in stages. Talking to the contractor in Minneapolis, he feels that we can do it all by lifts, which makes it a little more expensive for rental equipment, but the huge advantage of it is you don't have to spend all the money on scaffolding and renting and moving the scaffolding around. So we had a considerable savings by requiring the contractors to use portable lifts. Another really good advantage of this is that as the pavilion is occupied and continue to be used, it's going to be a lot easier to work around the building and not impact our entrances and exits as bad as it was before. Also, because we're not scaffolding the project length, we're able to reduce the amount of time being on site, because again, the scaffolding reduces a big part of that. The contractor also mentioned to us, and we've reaffirmed with one of the fiberglass manufacturers, that we're going to pre-assemble a lot of the balustrades in their plant and ship it here in lengths of about 12 feet. Originally, we were thinking we were going to have to assemble it in little pieces at a time right on the site. And they've identified to us that no, we do not have to do that. So that saves us time, of course, because you're as much prefabricating as you can do, saves significantly. And then the costs that we've done still maintain the historical look of the building with both the balustrade and the cornice. I think the next slide kind of shows a little variation and a couple other savings that we've come up with. The dashed in lines to the left up there are the existing location of where the cornice is at. What's drawn in solid lines is where we want to propose the new location of the balustrade. In other words, we want to move it out to the, as you look at the drawing, to the right slightly. Well, our structural engineer was having a lot of issues trying to, if we put the balustrade back exactly where it's at, I mentioned earlier that there's some rods that go in the middle. He says structurally that doesn't work very good when we come back with our new stuff. And we had to have, on our first estimate, kind of a more elaborate anchorage system and angles and rods to make that work. Well, if we determined if we would slide the balustrade over, as you can see here on the drawing, we can put in vertical steel tubes that not only come down inside the balusters, but they come down the face of the brick. So it's going to be way easier to attach the structural requirements. Those steel tubes will be probably 5 to 6 feet on center. probably at least 2 or 3 of them per 12-foot section of the prefabricated units. And so we've simplified the attachment a lot, and we've made it structurally more secure by doing it. Now, the other thing you can see here is we lowered the height of the baluster a little bit. There's a little cost savings here. And the reason we're proposing that to you is that historically, you're looking at this balusters when you're on the sidewalks, and you're looking up at an angle. So we can lower the height of our new balustrades a little because we've slid it out, and when you look at it from the street, it's gonna look basically the same as the original one did. And so that's why we shortened up the height here. And then also those steel angles that I talked about earlier, it's nice we only have to replace 30% of them. We need those, of course, to attach the whole cornice, which will all be made out of fiberglass as well. And again, that cornice material will be made in about 12-foot lengths as well, and prefabricated ahead of time. And again, we'd strongly recommend that using the fiberglass material is what's been used now in the last few years around the country to replace historic buildings. These are some pictures of different cornices and balustrades and parapets. The contractor that we're working with just replaced all of the balusters and cornice at the up in St. Paul at the Minnesota Capitol building. And he says it's amazing how very similar to what the Washington Pavilion is like compared to the Capitol in St. Paul. So he said that he will be bidding the project as one of the installers. I think last time we were here, we do have samples of the fiberglass materials if you guys ever want to look at them again. But and they come in colors and works out great. Do you want to talk to me?
So really just to talk through the funding request here, you know, our original estimate was anywhere from 5 to 7 million. I think we closed that gap a little bit. Somewhere right around 6 is what we were predicting, but again, with inflation, we were unsure where we were going to be at. You know, 6 million was appropriated in 2021. You know, we think the new project estimate, you know, again, there was discussion last time, you know, due to the cost, do we put the balusters back up on the building? And so I know one of the questions that the council asked for is, can we see a price for both? Okay. And so we broke that out, and you know, the cost savings isn't as much as we had thought because you still have to put a parapet back up on the building. You got to cap that. The baluster acts as a cap, essentially. So again, so you're looking at about 3.6 million with no baluster, about 4.2 with balusters. Now, that's, you know, inflation adjusted. I threw in about a 5% inflation from that number we received earlier. So again, that's a pretty good number, we think, based on some of the information we received. Now that, again, that was late this fall from a contractor. Things have adjusted a little bit in the construction market since then. So, and then, you know, we thought, well, if we're going to do this project right, you know, we got an opportunity here, you know, with some cost savings that we could possibly do some color changing LED backlighting on the baluster to really enhance the look of that building like we already did on the east side of that building with the color changing LEDs. So we thought about throwing that in as an add alternate for the project. Timeline for the project right now, you know, we're here we are today with the update to the city council and talk through the options. We're in the process of finishing up the design documents and plans for the project. Q2, we'd like to bid this project. Now, this is going to be a little bit different type of bidding is what we're thinking. We're going to bid the fiberglass first, so we know what kind of contractor we're working with, because every fiberglass manufactures their fiberglass a little bit different. It all attaches a little bit different. It all comes together. The joints meet up differently. And so knowing that, we'd be able to put that information into the construction docs before we bid the construction and the installation. That way we get a real good tight number from the contractor and we limit the amount of change orders we would possibly see. So be 2 bids for that project, 1 for fiberglass, 1 for installation and construction. Plan on starting construction, what we think would be 3rd quarter. That's our estimate right now. You know, it all depends on workload and everything from the contractors too out there. We all know it's a tight market. And then we're thinking approximately about a year is what it's going to take to complete that project. Maybe less, maybe more, but again, it's all going to be timed about, you know, how quickly can we get the fiberglass in. You know, there's obviously a resin shortage and things of that nature, so we're always dealing with supply chain issues. But right now, our estimate is right now at, you know, 3rd quarter of 2023. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
Councilors, questions? Councilor Jensen.
Thank you, Councilor Sale. Could you go to the first slide? It's the picture of the pavilion. On that, you can see the baluster has 2 different colors. As a part of this project, is it your guys' intent to make the colors the actual same? Not the same as in this picture, but continuing around the parapet?
Right, it'll be a more uniform color all the way around, and it'll gradually weather as it does get older. It'll probably look a little bit more darker at first, kind of like it does on the east side of the building there. So I think that's what you'll see right away, and that way you won't have that change in color like that. Yep.
Okay. And then maybe a comment. I really think the lighting idea is, as an ad alternative, something we should really look into. I think it'd really enhance that piece. And then with the extra money that was appropriated and may not be used depending on a lot, how does that come back into the city's budget, or how is that then reallocated?
Well, we'll actually reprioritize that money for other higher priority projects. So again, we'll identify what those projects look like, whether it be in the pavilion or where else it could be used. But again, right now we would prioritize it for other higher priority
And then
projects.
you could come back to the council and get our approval of that priority.
Give you an update on where we're going to use those funds, yeah.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you.
Councilor Neitzer.
First of all, great job with the cost savings. That's very good news. So in the current, and I would just throw in my 2 cents, given the delta is not that big and the visual impact, I think doing it with the balustrades is a good idea. So I would support that. So in the current balusters, that vertical metal rod, and then being a source of water infiltration. So in the depiction, it doesn't show that the rod extends, you know, all the way to the top. So where do you believe the water is getting in? Has there been a breakdown of material above, or what's going on?
Right, I don't have a picture to show you, but if you've ever get a chance or you want to go up there, I can definitely take you up there. But it's a great tour. Trust me, I can get you on top of the building. But you'll notice that there's a lot of seams, and it's been caulked many times over the years, and that caulking just wears out over time. But the balustrades, you know, with the freeze thaw cycle, have now broken it apart and cracked it. And again, there's no I guess safety issue or anything like that. It's not going to fall off the building or anything. But as time, we've got some seep holes where the waters really kind of came in, and now it's starting to crack. And you know, obviously steel and water don't mix, and again, we're starting to see the corrosion there on those steel rods.
Okay, so essentially the balusters in some places would have broken and crumbled, and now there's a place for water to infiltrate and follow down vertically?
Yep, it's been cracked over the years. Again, they're very old, and so we've caulked them over the years to try and keep the water out.
The new ones show this.
Sure.
Please.
Why don't you go to the, yeah, right here would be just fine. Well, go with the original. At the very top, where there's it's actually terracotta, that's kind of that circular shape product. I don't know if you want to highlight it on the mouse. Or those terracotta pieces right there at the very top, if you go up and look at them, they're only about this long, 12 inches long, because they're individual pieces. So every joint, every 12 inches, all the way around the whole building, there was a mortar joint or sealant that we've added through the years, but those are the joints that are leaking. And then the water gets into each one of those top of the terracotta, and then the easiest way down is through that rod. So what's nice about the fiberglass is our pieces are gonna be 12 feet long, so we're gonna have way less joints to deal with. And fiberglass, they actually do kind of a connection where they slide together, and you don't even have to caulk them when you put them together. They kind of glue it together, frankly. And that's why we eliminate any opportunity of the joints for water to get in. And so that's why we have the issue now, is because about every 13 inches, there's a joint all the way around.
Thank you. And you just answered my second question, which was what in the new design and new materials will minimize water damage going forward? So thanks. Good.
Yeah, the operational cost then of having to caulk every 3, 4, 5 years is not gonna be there any longer, because essentially the way they overlap and they glue together like that. Again, virtually zero maintenance on the basically the cornice and the balustrade.
And I do have one other little thing here, Scott. The other thing we're gonna add is, where this rod comes down vertically, when it gets about right to the top of where the existing roof is at, we're gonna be adding a horizontal rubber membrane over the whole top of the roof, and then just that vertical steel tube is gonna penetrate it. So we're getting there's no membrane of any kind on the building now. So this rubber membrane underneath our new balustrades is another safety measure for more water protection.
Thank you. Counselor Rick Kiley, you're on the phone.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I was very pleased when I first received this information to see that the project cost was significantly lower even with the baluster. I think it's important that we maintain the building in the condition in which the city received it some 20 plus years ago. So it's, again, I was happy to see that the price for the necessary repairs have been reduced, actually. Question for Steve regarding the proposed plans for installing the balusters. So it actually it appears that it actually overhangs the face of the building. And then does that create any issue with water running down the baluster and then kind of wrapping around underneath, or will that membrane that you just discussed help prevent penetration beneath the baluster system?
Yep.
Yeah, right there. It appears that there's actually a void.
Yep, that's a very good question. What we did not show on this drawing is we're gonna fill that space in with new fiberglass underneath it, so that will be filled in. We just didn't show that on this drawing because we were concentrating on the structural attachment of that tube. So there will be a solid fiberglass underneath it that ties right into the cornice itself, so that we don't have
Very good.
what you're mentioning. So it doesn't show on the drawing here, but there will be fiberglass underneath it continuously, horizontally.
And because there's a significant weight difference now with the new fiberglass system, you can put that, bring that forward and support it just on the backside because you're not supporting as much weight as what you are with the current system. Is that correct?
Yes, the weight of the fiberglass is considerably less than what the terracotta panels are now. The other thing is, as was mentioned earlier, we want to bid the attachment of the cornice first by the manufacturer so that when we do all of the attachments and the wood blocking, et cetera, everything that goes back to those steel angles, as well as to the face of the brick that's behind those vertical tubes, we want to attach them exactly the way the manufacturer would like us to attach them. That's why we want to bid this in two different steps.
Okay. Thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate your answers.
Counselor Starr.
Yes, I know you guys can't see it, but we're all jumping up and down, all excited because this is an incredible savings in a way that we don't have to go backwards and make a historic preservation decision to either stage it or not do parts, but we can restore it in an awesome way. So thank you to Arc Inc. Thank you to your office as well, Scott, to bring us to this point. This is pretty exciting news that we're able to do this right and probably better than we originally thought we could. So.
Well, we heard you loud and clear, back in February, and, I think, we worked together and really kind of came up with what I think is probably the best design, best alternative I think we could possibly come up with for this building, and I think, it's really gonna look nice when it's done.
It's a good way to treat us, scare us with a really high number and come back with a much better one, and we appreciate that.
You're welcome.
The only couple of places quickly is life expectancy. What will my grandkids be replacing this, or my great-grandkids, or what do we, I know it's a unique project, but what is the life expectancy of the
If we go back to when we were talking about this last February, we said anywhere from 30 to 50 years. And we mean that. I mean, this is a heavy gauge fiberglass, and again, I don't expect it to weather to the problem where we're gonna have to replace it anytime sooner. Again, it's gonna be pretty much maintenance free.
Just seems like win-win all the way through. How much of a contingency did you build in? Is there some money if things don't go the way we think? Or when you do an old building and you start tearing into roofs and start building things?
Yeah, again, they added some 5%.
Yeah, we had 5%.
5%.
In our original estimate, and then we included some more for potential inflation.
You got to step up to the, I'm sorry, you just have to step up because we've got the people
Sure.
on the.
When we did our original estimate, we used a 5% contingency.
Okay.
Based on what we thought inflation would be through parts of '22 here. But I think you, as a city, you've even added some more, because we just don't know what inflation's gonna be here for the calendar year '22. And part of this won't be bid until the summer. So, but we had original 5, and I know we've added some more to help cover that.
Yeah, and the numbers I presented today, I added another 5 on top of that, just based on when this will go to bid and when we will start construction, just to be safe.
Makes sense, because again, you're tearing into an old building too. I guess that's what concerns me as much as the inflation of what we find when we remove, I'm trying to remember, all this time I still can't tell Cornice and Parapet from each other, but I know they go together and I end up putting them together. So, but I know when we remove that heavy brick that, and the terracotta and dig into it, that who knows what we'll find too that we didn't realize was
We've
there.
all watched the restoration shows on TV.
Absolutely,
They
I'm
all-
a pro
they all
now.
cost more, right? So
Yes,
we
thank
are
you.
planning for that.
Appreciate it.
Any further questions, council? I guess the only question I would have is when can we schedule the tour? I saw some excitement here, so let us know, and don't pick a windy day like today.
No.
But I think warm and 40 degrees with no wind would be awesome, but
Yeah,
let's schedule
no, I
that.
can put something together. I can get you guys up there, and again, it's a beautiful view.
Yes, we appreciate it. Thank you very much for what you
You're
guys have done. At this point, that's our only presentation. We'll take public comment. Anybody here to speak on this subject? Seeing none. Counselor Jensen.
Thank you. I'd make a motion to enter into executive session for contract negotiations or negotiating with employees or employee representatives pursuant to SDCL 12524, and for consulting with legal counsel or reviewing communications from legal counsel about proposed or pending litigation or contractual matters pursuant to South Dakota Codified Law 12523.
Second.
Motion by Jensen, second by Selberg. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Council members Erickson, Jensen,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes,
Star.
Yes.
that motion's passed. Thank you all. This meeting will be adjourned. We're going into executive session.